We are back here now on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast and diving into a pretty big discussion, a significant one, I think, for Kyler Murray and his chances of winning the MVP. Probably not something you thought you'd hear on today's show or really anywhere in the sports world around the NFL, but it was brought up and I thought it was interesting to really dive into it and bring up both sides and see where we come out as a result to this conversation. But to give some context and where Kyler Murray can sort of start his MVP campaign potentially, we'd have to start with their offensive coordinator. Arizona hired a new offensive coordinator back with Jonathan Gannon at the beginning of last season by hiring Drew Petzing. He came in last year, like I mentioned, with Jonathan Gannon, but didn't have Kyler Murray at the start of it. Didn't have him to integrate his system, go over the ideas that you'd obviously want to do with your franchise quarterback. He was deprived of that because Kyler Murray missed all of last offseason and the first half of the regular season with the ACL rehab that he was going through. And through that entire process, when he did finally come back, he was still himself, but you didn't really feel like a sense of reliability, comfortability in that system because you can't learn it halfway through the system. It's just impossible. So this year is finally the first offseason that he is learning this new system, getting comfortable with it, really having command of everything to do with Drew Petzing's offensive scheme. And a big component of that is going to be Trey McBride, the standout tight end last year for the Arizona Cardinals. He has already talked about Kyler Murray and how he has seen a little bit of a different version of Kyler this year by saying he seems more motivated than ever. He continued, "This is the most confident I've seen him. This is the first year I've been fully healthy with him. He's fully healthy. I think everything is trending in the right way. He has a ton of weapons out there, and I have full confidence that he's capable of an MVP season." Clearly, Arizona had to be in some sort of the same mindset because they did give him a 5-year, $230 million deal a couple of years ago. Right now, he has been leapfrogged a couple of times because he makes $46 million per year, and the highest paid quarterback now almost makes $10 million more than what Kyler Murray got, but he is still right in the middle of that extension that he received from the Cardinals, and they wouldn't have given him a lot of money, a lot of guaranteed money at the time, if they didn't have some sort of belief that he can at least get better. And along those lines of getting better, I think this MVP conversation is brought up, with Trey McBride now saying it and looking at what Kyler Murray has done. I thought I'd bring it up and maybe make a case for either side. You look so far through 5 to 4 years that Kyler Murray has been in the league, hasn't in a lot of people's minds made that major jump. When you're talking about talented quarterbacks, the guys that change games, the catalysts, the X factors in a lot of games to determining a win or a loss, Kyler Murray's name doesn't really pop up that much. And does that have to do more so with his team or more so with just him overall? I wanted to look at it, over the first 4 years of his career. It's been almost 4 years, since his best year as a professional in 2020. And in that year, we saw almost what I think could be the absolute peak of Kyler Murray's powers, because in 2020, he posted almost 4,000 passing yards, just 29 yards short of that. He had 819 rushing yards in that year, 11 rushing touchdowns, and 26 passing touchdowns as well, to go along with only 10 interceptions, which is not an awful ratio at all. But he didn't make the postseason. He made the postseason the following year in 2021, but lost to the Los Angeles Rams. And you look at those numbers, obviously very impressive in my opinion. In 2020, arguably his best year of his career. But in terms of stats, he has never been any higher than 10th through 13th ranked in any of those categories in passing yards, passing touchdowns, or anything like that. And his record as a team with the Arizona Cardinals since he has been in the NFL hasn't been too great either. In 2019, they were 5-10-1. In 2020, his best career year, they were only 8-8. Then in 2021, when they did make the playoffs, they finished second in the NFC West, and they had an 11-6 record, but again, they lost in the first round. Then Then you look at 2022, and they were 4-13, and they repeated that exact same record this past year in 2023, 4-13 again. So you look at those records, you look at the numbers and where they stack up against other quarterbacks. From that point of view, this conversation really doesn't hold any merit for Kyler Murray to be capable of winning that MVP. But I wanted to throw it out there because just giving you guys some thoughts on why that could be. Why hasn't he really been in those conversations? Is he capable? Is he capable of winning it? I think it's different than just saying, will he win one? Will he win one with how talented this quarterback pool is right now? It is most likely that he will not win one because that is a big ask, especially where the Cardinals are at this point in their development. And I think that's the biggest point of it because if you look of the surrounding players around him, his best teams were probably in 2020 and in 2021. And those teams, again, weren't world beaters, weren't historical in any way, didn't have too many great game-changing players around them, but they still were impressive, around 500 and then 11-6 in 2021. But since then, the surrounding cast around him hasn't been too great. He's been asked to do a lot, I believe, from watching some of the games, from watching just some of Kyler Murray. I believe that he's been tasked with doing a lot more to determine a win or a loss than a lot of other quarterbacks because, quite frankly, a lot of other organizations handle this entire situation of a young quarterback coming in, being the face of a franchise, a lot better than what the Cardinals have handled it as. I keep going back to the Houston Texans, the Cincinnati Bengals to an extent as well, by drafting Jamar Chase and just drafting a ton of weapons for Joe Burrow. Justin Herbert also, when he came into the league and how just special he was right off the bat with all those talented players around him, that's the kind of situation that really produces some of these outstanding performances so early on by these quarterbacks. And I don't think Kyler really ever got that. And not to just release him from any, I guess, sort of blame from improving this team. He has certainly played a part in that. But I feel like we haven't really seen the best version of Kyler Murray. I don't think I'll ever be content in saying that until I see a very, competitive team around him. Until I see the Cardinals surround him with the best situation that I think he's ever had, arguably, and that's not a high bar at all with how good this team has been around Kyler. I don't feel comfortable in saying that he isn't capable of winning the MVP. And as a team, since 2020 and 2021, which were arguably his best teams around him, they only really got worse, and now we're starting to see a turning of the corner with Jonathan Gannon coming in, drafting Marvin Harrison, James Conner there as well. Hopefully this is a turning point for them, and then I can make a better determination of this argument, but also you look more deeper into some of these stats and some of the production that we've seen from Kyler Murray. He's thrown for over 37 yards every year he's played over 14 games, and the size of him, his frame, is always going to be a major talking point, but in terms of talent, throwing the ball, these guys that come from a baseball background and are talented in that way, I really am fascinated by it because at his height, similar to Russell Wilson and some of the other quarterbacks similar of his stature, I think Kyler is still very good of ball placement, accuracy a lot of the times with changing the angle of his throw, manipulating some of the defenses, and just getting out of pressure and getting out of trouble just himself based on talent. I think his talent supersedes any hurdle that comes in his way because of that size thing, and that is a concern when you're talking about injuries, but I think the talent supersedes that, and he's always been in the conversation in terms of quarterbacks, and also talking about ranking him where he ranks as of right now, just on talent alone and who you would rather have, I guess, to start a team. He would probably still fall outside of the top 10. I won't name them all right now, but I think it's a safe bet to say he's definitely not in the top 8. You can make an argument for top 10, maybe, at that 10th spot, but I think he falls comfortably around 11 through 13, or at 12 potentially. But again, I won't rank all the quarterbacks I could take above him, but there is a good amount. The level of quarterbacking at this stage of the NFL where we find ourselves right now is very, very good. And I think a lot of teams just overall have a better situation than Kyler Murray. So to say he's incapable of winning an MVP is a little bit, just of an overreaction. I think he can be capable. I like some of the pieces that the Cardinals have added around him, but until they get a little bit better, and the fact that Trey McBride brought it up, I didn't think it was too crazy. Some people might look at that statement and really not like it and think that there's no chance ever that Kyler Murray could be an MVP candidate. But from what I've seen in terms of talent, a different dynamic with the running game, and just his arm talent, just overall. His overall talent is one thing, but his arm capabilities and his arm strength and how he changes the angles of his throws, you can't find that anywhere. I think he's done a lot better with a lot less than some of these other quarterbacks that are being compared to him. But I hopefully for him and the Cardinals, he gets better, or the team gets better around him, and then we could really get a real gauge of what Kyler Murray could truly be in this league once he gets a better team around him, because that obviously matters. No matter how talented your quarterback is, you need players to catch his passes, guys to protect in front of him. The Cardinals really haven't had that up until 2021, so hopefully they find that. I think they will under Jonathan Gannon, but it is a long process to go through. But for right now, he is capable of winning an MVP. Will he do it? It doesn't look likely right now with the team around him, but we shall see. But we're going to put a pin in that conversation and keep going with the rest of the show. 2 more topics to get to on today's episode. Talking some more about the New England Patriots, the new offensive coordinator, Alex Van Pelt. How is he implementing a new strategy on offense to really get the best out of Drake May? We're going to talk about that, and the Jaguars getting the approval from the City Council of Jacksonville to go ahead and renovate their new stadium that is set to be finished in 2028. What went into the details on that and who is paying what are all going to be discussed in just a few moments. We'll be right back after this break.